Round 7 of the Formula One World Championship was in the picturesque setting of Monaco. Championship race hotting up with Michael Schumacher having won at Nürburgring in the previous Grand Prix, but the McLarens were not out of contention. This, the most prestigious race of them all, 78 laps around the streets of the Principality. And as always, royalty in attendance at the Monaco Grand Prix. Prince Rainier to present the trophy at the end of the race. Michael Schumacher on pole position, 25th pole of his career, taking first place by 0.271 of a second from the rest of the field. This was the starting grid. Michael Schumacher, 4 times a winner at Monaco and the championship leader on pole. The surprise alongside him, Jarno Trulli for Jordan. Maybe their season was turning around at this point. On row 2, David Coulthard, the lead driver for McLaren, second here in 1996, his only finish in 5 starts. Heinz-Harald Frentzen alongside him. Mika Häkkinen with his worst qualifying of the season so far, and alongside him was Rubens Barrichello in the second Ferrari. Jean Alesi, best qualifying of the season so far for Prost, second here, way back in 1990. Giancarlo Fisichella for Benetton, and Ralf Schumacher yet to score a point at Monaco for Williams, there on row 5, alongside Eddie Irvine, yet to score a point this season for Jaguar. First start aborted when Alexander Wurz in the Benetton stalled on the grid and required attention in the pit lane. Second time of asking, Schumacher away well. Jarno Trulli expertly slotting into second place and blocking out David Coulthard from making a charge up the inside. So 21 cars away from the grid, but at the Grand Hotel hairpin, a problem after a collision between Jenson Button and Pedro de la Rosa. De la Rosa and Button trotting back round by the harbour, and Pedro Diniz, Ricardo Zonta and Nick Heidfeld also having to jog back to the pits. So Button started from the pit lane. Pedro de la Rosa wasn't able to start at all. Second time of asking, Michael Schumacher away well. Trulli again slotting into second place ahead of David Coulthard. Expert work by the Jordan driver. All the cars through safely. First corner at Saint-Devote. Michael Schumacher with a rocket-like first lap opened up a major gap between himself and the rest of the field. Schumacher leading by 2.35 seconds from Trulli after the first 2 miles of the race. 5 seconds covering the top 6. So even this early in the race, it was a question of who could catch Michael Schumacher. He set the fastest lap of 125.192 as early as lap 3. David Coulthard found himself hampered by Trulli in front of him. Jenson Button an early pits caller and an early retirement. Williams man seeing the end of his first Grand Prix at Monte Carlo. Alexander Wurz had an unhappy time. His race ended up in the barriers at Saint-Devote. Marc Genet for Minardi finished in Casino Square, and his teammate followed him soon afterwards. Gaston Mazzacane, another man who hit trouble just after Saint-Devote. That Armco barrier seeing an awful lot of the action in the 2000 Monaco Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher opened up a considerable gap over Jarno Trulli, edging towards half a minute. Fisichella put Barrichello under attack at the chicane. Barrichello managed to hang on from the Benetton man. Coulthard was safe from Frentzen, but Frentzen was now struggling with Häkkinen close on his tail. Jean Alesi went out, so too did Pedro Diniz. The field really thinning out, but it was still Schumacher who proceeded untroubled in first place. Häkkinen started to go slowly. His McLaren losing power, and Barrichello and Fisichella both swept past him. Häkkinen made it into the pits for attention from McLaren, overseen by Ron Dennis. With 42 laps left, Häkkinen still had a chance to get back into the race. Jarno Trulli didn't. He lost power. Coulthard took over second place. Eddie Irvine moved up the order for Jaguar. Häkkinen emerged from the pits. Ralf Schumacher swept past him on the way through, but then lost control at Saint-Devote and again that Armco barrier came into play. Truly into the pits and into retirement. Disappointment for him after showing up so well in the early stages. David Coulthard set the fastest lap. 34 to go, and he was trying to close on Schumacher. Great performance by the Scot, whose ambition has always been to win this race. Michael Schumacher's lead extended to 33.5 seconds. Coulthard safe from Frentzen, and Schumacher had enough time in hand to be called into the pits for his stop and to be out again without losing the lead. Schumacher came in at the end of lap 49. Even with over half a minute in hand, this still had to be a good stop by Ferrari. And it was. 7.7 seconds stationary. Schumacher stayed in first place. It seemed certain that Schumacher was going to push on and win the Monaco Grand Prix for a fifth time. Coulthard still needed a pit stop. The difference between them came down to 10 seconds. Zonta crashed out again at Sainte-Devote. Surveyed what might have been. Into the pits, Eddie Irvine. Now running in 7th place. Fisichella, pits caller at Benetton. And he was able to come in and out without losing 5th. Ferrari ready for Barrichello. Jordan ready for Frentzen. These two, 3rd and 4th at the end of lap 53. Straight battle between the pit crews. Ferrari was slick, but so too were Jordan. Frentzen stayed 3rd, but Michael Schumacher was in trouble. The front right off the ground, a problem at the rear of the car, and he had 2 miles to limp round to get to the pits for attention. In the meantime, Coulthard took over the lead on lap 56, came into the pits and was able to retain first place. Michael Schumacher made it back to Ferrari pits, but already it looked as though he was liable to finish way out of the points. And indeed, that was confirmed. Michael Schumacher, having led for 55 laps, was going no further. But Mika Häkkinen was still fighting. He'd climbed 7 places to 7th, setting the fastest lap along the way. Frentzen crashed out from 2nd place, again at Sainte-Devote, which left Coulthard free to canter home and record his first win at Monaco and become the first British driver to win in Monte Carlo for 27 years. David Coulthard the winner in a fraction over 1 hour 49, his 2nd win of the season, and the gap on Michael Schumacher in the championship closed to 12 points. Coulthard 15.8 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello. Giancarlo Fisichella would join them on the podium. The first points for Jaguar scored by Eddie Irvine, Mika Salo in 5th place, and Mika Häkkinen up to 6th by the finish. The not classified drivers, Michael Schumacher, Ralf Schumacher, who was in trouble with his injured leg, and also John Alesi, a man who was going so well for Prost until he disappeared down an escape road. Pedro de la Rosa didn't even manage to start. So it was congratulations, David Coulthard, the winner in Monte Carlo. Giancarlo Fisichella congratulated him. Coulthard delighted as much with the win as the gap between him and Schumacher coming down to 12 points. Mika Häkkinen on 29, Rubens Barrichello on 22. The only drivers past 20 points in this season's championship so far after 7 races. For David Coulthard, an appointment with royalty. The Constructors' Championship, the gap between Ferrari and McLaren now down to 5 points. Williams and Benetton, the only other teams in double figures. So David Coulthard, the winner, and this a victory achieved even though he was still receiving treatment for those injured ribs, the devastating plane crash before the Spanish Grand Prix. This is the one he wanted to win.
I've always said there's a few big Grand Prix for me personally that I'd like to win, and that's Spa, because of it's my favourite track. The British Grand Prix, of course, it's my home Grand Prix. The Italian Grand Prix, because there's nothing quite like an Italian crowd for Formula 1. And Monaco, because it's technically one of the most challenging and difficult tracks for any driver.
Rubens Barrichello second, equaling his career best finish, but what about that start?
Well, actually the start wasn't too bad. I was just blocked with people in front. I had to brake, and Ralph made a really good start from the outside, so I had to back off, so I lost time with that, and unfortunately that was the story.
For Giancarlo Fisichella, his second podium of the year after his second in Brazil.
I was not optimistic, obviously, but now I am very pleased about the result. The target was to score some point. Obviously, my dream was to get on the podium, and now I am third. It's fantastic.
David Coulthard generously shared his victory champagne with anyone who'd come within range. The team's prepared to move back across the Atlantic for the next Grand Prix at Canada. Formula One World Championship season approached the halfway stage with round 8, the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. Michael Schumacher led the way in the Drivers' Championship with 46 points to David Coulthard's 34 and Mika Häkkinen's 29. Ferrari led the way in the Constructors' Championship by 5 points from McLaren. Michael Schumacher took pole position, 5th of the season and the 26th of his career. Michael Schumacher, 3 times a winner in Montreal, but it had been 12 races since the man on pole position had also gone on to win the race. So Michael Schumacher ahead of David Coulthard, the winner last time out in Monaco. Rubens Barrichello was second in Montreal in 1995. Mika Häkkinen had won here in 1999. Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Jacques Villeneuve, the local hero, on row 3. Behind them, Jarno Trulli, yet to score a point in Canada, and Riccardo Zonta equalled his career best qualifying. Pedro de la Rosa and Giancarlo Fisichella, who was second here a year ago, making up the top 10 on the grid. Right at the start, before the parade lap, a problem for McLaren. Their mechanics were still on the grid when the green lights were given. Michael Schumacher away, and David Coulthard under threat of a penalty for having his team still on the grid as the cars moved off. Michael Schumacher away well at the start, but the best start of all was made by the local man, Jacques Villeneuve, bursting down the inside, going past Rubens Barrichello, up alongside Mika Häkkinen into the hairpin, holding him off and taking 3rd position. Eddie Irvine left stranded on the grid and needed a push to get going. So excellent work by Villeneuve, slotting in there behind Michael Schumacher and David Coulthard, but effectively holding up the rest of the field, including Rubens Barrichello and Mika Häkkinen. Pedro de la Rosa moved up to 6th with this overtaking manoeuvre on Heinz-Harald Frentzen. David Coulthard into the pits to serve a stop-go penalty for that infringement of the rules before the parade lap. Nobody was allowed to work on the car, and he wasn't allowed to take on board extra fuel. That dropped him well down the order and out of contention, and left Barrichello and Villeneuve fighting over 2nd place. Barrichello looked as though he'd taken it, but then Villeneuve fought back. Excellent work by the former champion. But Barrichello was not going to be denied easily, and eventually took the inside line, and it was now a Ferrari 1 and 2. Mika Hakkinen left in 4th place. The two Jordans swapped places, Trulli now ahead of Frentzen. Michael Schumacher's lead after 27 of 69 laps, already 26 seconds, and 33.5 seconds covered the top 6. First Jordan in, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, followed by Michael Schumacher. Frentzen went out of the race and into retirement. Michael Schumacher, for his scheduled stop at the end of lap 34, knew that he couldn't stay in first place. But the damage was limited because the only man who could get past him was his teammate Rubens Barrichello. A good stop in under 10 seconds. Barrichello swept through to take the lead. Michael Schumacher stayed right on his tail. Frentzen pushed away into retirement as Hakkinen went past Villeneuve. Hakkinen now up to 3rd and in pursuit of the two Ferraris. Heidfeld went out in spectacular fashion, the Prost blowing up just at the end of the pit lane. Hakkinen set the fastest lap of the race and also eclipsed Eddie Irvine's time of the year before. Jarno Trulli in the pits at Jordan. Most pit stops during this race all round about the 10-second mark. Hakkinen came in from 3rd place, but such was the bunching in the middle of the field that he was already down to 7th by the time he was stationary. Hakkinen, McLaren's closest challenger to the two Ferraris. Barrichello came in from the lead at the end of lap 43. Again, good work by Ferrari to get him moving in under 9 seconds. Coulthard stopped 8.6 seconds, but he was facing a real battle to get back into contention. Jacques Villeneuve went off the track as the rain started to splatter down, but when he came into the pits, he took on another set of dry weather tyres. Maybe this was a mistake. Conditions were becoming more and more treacherous. Villeneuve was delayed for over 14 seconds and then found Giancarlo Fisichella skating across in front of him in the pit lane. Various battles were developing up and down the order. The two Pedros, Pedro de la Rosa and Pedro Diniz, squabbling over 10th place, which Diniz eventually claimed. First man into the pits for rain tyres as the rain started to fall down with a vengeance was Michael Schumacher. That was good work by Ferrari, but Barrichello followed him in, and this was a Ferrari mistake. No rain tyres ready for their number 2. So Barrichello dropped out of 2nd place down to 4th. Uncharacteristic error by Ferrari this season. Mika Hakkinen stayed out as long as he dared, but eventually had to pit for rain tyres. Had been running 2nd, now he dropped down to 4th. Conditions on the track circuit became more and more slippery. Fisichella was in 2nd place, but had difficulty keeping the Benetton on the track surface, as did Eddie Irvine in his Jaguar, and even Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari. But Schumacher managed to keep going and stayed in 1st place. Pedro de la Rosa, though, was out with a punctured right rear. This occurred after yet another tangle with Pedro Diniz. Real drama developing. Villeneuve crashed out. The end for the local hero. He'd gone past David Coulthard but collided with Ralf Schumacher at the hairpin. Coulthard and Wirtz in a Formula 1 ballet in the gravel. Coulthard's collision here with Wirtz virtually ruled out the chances of him taking a point from this race. So it was the two Ferraris who came home 1st and 2nd. Real grandstand finale for the Ferrari team, delighted to pick up a full set of 16 points from this race. Michael Schumacher the winner in a fraction over 1 hour 41. Schumacher delighted with his 5th victory of the season. Confirmation of the classification, Fisichella joining Barrichello and Schumacher on the podium. Hakkinen, Verstappen and Trulli picking up the remainder of the points. Coulthard just missing out in 7th place. How costly the problem with the car before the parade lap proved to be. The stop-go penalty easing the pressure on Michael Schumacher right from the start. Other drivers who crashed out before the finish, Ralf Schumacher, Jacques Villeneuve and Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar. 16 men classified. Among the not classified, former winner John Alesi, Nick Heidfeld, whose race ended in smoke and flames, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who was pushed away into retirement after only 14 laps. Johnny Herbert also failed to finish in the Jaguar. Delight for Ferrari though, their 2 men congratulated by their team and by the 3rd place man Giancarlo Fisichella at the end of the race. Michael Schumacher with a 22-point lead over David Coulthard in the Drivers' Championship. Mika Hakkinen just 2 points behind his teammate now. The rest of the drivers all squabbling over minor positions. Montreal proved to be a famous victory for Michael Schumacher and for Ferrari. A vital result too. Ferrari extending their lead from 5 points over McLaren in the Constructors' Championship to 18 points. Benetton leapfrogged Williams for 3rd place as a result of Fisichella finishing 3rd in Montreal. Only Jordan and the rest of the teams have made it into double figures. So the victory then for Michael Schumacher, the 40th of his career, the 5th of the season. Well on course for the Drivers' Championship. But this race here was surely decided when David Coulthard received his stop-go penalty.
To the winning constructor.
My team informed me that they had whatever problem on the car, and they stayed on the car within the last 15 seconds, which obviously is not allowed. And so we guessed there was going on something, but honestly it didn't affect very much my way. I just drove my race, and David wasn't close enough to attack me at all. So I just went for my style. Afterwards, when he was gone, I took it a bit easier just to make sure I will never run into a mistake or do anything wrong, and just took it easy, honestly.
The second place driver.
Second place, Rubens Barrichello, importantly ahead of Mika Hakkinen.
Mika had a better start than I did, but in a way we were all the same speed there, and then Jacques came on the outside and run by. So it was a strange feeling, but in a way it was better that it was Villeneuve than Mika, because I knew that he couldn't go that fast, so I would have had a chance to overtake.
3rd place again for Giancarlo Fisichella.
At the beginning was difficult, so I drove quite safe race. Then when it's starting to raining quite heavy, I called the team, I called my engineers, and I asked to have wet tires. So 1 lap later they called me, and we stopped in the right moment.
Now the teams cross the Atlantic again.